INFJs are often seen as gentle, thoughtful, and understanding people. They try to look beneath the surface of others and understand what they truly feel. They also put a lot of care into the relationships they build, whether those relationships are deep friendships, family bonds, or romantic connections. Because they listen so well and show empathy so naturally, people tend to open up to them easily. But what most people never notice is that an INFJ can close themselves off just as quickly as they once opened up. When disappointment happens, again and again, something starts to form inside them. It is not loud or dramatic. It is not even visible from the outside. Instead, it is a quiet barrier that slowly rises between them and the world. Many call it an invisible wall. This invisible wall does not appear overnight. It builds piece by piece, usually after the INFJ has tried for a long time to give benefit of the doubt, to understand someone's intentions, or to stay hopeful. They often approach people with a mix of intuition, patience, and trust. But when those efforts are met with letdowns, broken promises, or emotional neglect, the INFJ starts protecting themselves. What begins as a small step back becomes a larger emotional distance. Eventually, they may seem completely unreachable, even to the people they once trusted deeply. This video explains why that wall forms. INFJs are not cold or uncaring. In fact, the wall is built because they care so much. When they have invested their feelings, time, and energy into someone, disappointment hurts more than it might for other personality types. It is like a wound that takes longer to heal. Once they feel that wound repeatedly, they no longer want to risk being hurt the same way again. Understanding the reasons behind this invisible wall is important not only for INFJs, but also for anyone who loves them or works closely with them. Each reason reveals a part of how INFJs experience emotional harm and how they try to protect their sense of stability. They may not express their frustration openly, and they may not argue when something feels unfair. Instead, they quietly shift their boundaries, choosing emotional distance as a way to regain balance. The wall that forms is not a punishment and not a test. It is simply their final method of self-protection when they have felt too much disappointment for too long. By seeing the deeper causes behind this reaction, people can learn how to support INFJs better, respect their limits, and avoid triggering further emotional withdrawal. And for INFJs, understanding these patterns can help them recognize when they are closing themselves off and why it feels necessary. With that foundation set, the next parts of the video explore the main reasons this invisible wall forms and why INFJs rely on it when they have reached their emotional limit. Reason number 1. INFJs absorb emotions deeply. INFJs experience emotions on a deeper level than most people realize. Even when they seem calm on the outside, they are often feeling many layers of meaning beneath the surface. They notice small changes in tone, body language, and energy. They sense when something is off, and they often feel other people's moods as if those moods were their own. Because of this, disappointment does not feel like a simple letdown. It hits their emotional core. When someone they care about ignores them, dismisses their feelings, or makes a careless comment, the INFJ does not just brush it off. They replay it in their mind. They analyze what it meant. They try to understand the possible reasons behind it. They feel the sting long after the moment has passed. And when these moments happen repeatedly, they begin to feel like emotional weight pressing down on them. INFJs also have strong empathy. They want to help others, support them, and be there when they struggle. But this makes them more vulnerable. When they give emotional support freely and consistently, but the same people end up disappointing them, the INFJ feels drained. It is not just frustration. It is the painful sense that their effort was not valued. Another problem is that INFJs often notice problems long before anyone else does. Their intuition alerts them when something is shifting in a relationship. They can sense emotional distance, dishonesty, or fading respect. While this helps them understand situations, it also means they feel the disappointment earlier and more intensely. This emotional absorption leads to the first block in the invisible wall. To stop the constant emotional overload, the INFJ starts pulling back. They try to protect their feelings by limiting exposure to people who bring them repeated disappointment. They become quieter. They share less. They stop expecting others to understand them. The wall grows out of the need to guard their heart after feeling too much for too long. Reason number 2. Their high expectations get shattered. INFJs naturally expect a lot from people, not because they are demanding, but because they believe strongly in human potential. They see what someone could be, not just who they are right now. They often give people chances, support them through struggles, and believe in the best version of them. This mix of idealism and hope makes every disappointment much more damaging. When INFJs first connect with someone, they often picture a meaningful and loyal relationship. They imagine honesty, emotional depth, and mutual respect. They expect that the other person will communicate openly and put effort into the relationship just as they do. But not everyone operates with the same emotional awareness or dedication. When people fail to meet these expectations, the INFJ feels the gap sharply. The disappointment is not only about the behavior itself, it is also about the loss of what the INFJ believed that person could be. It feels like watching potential fall apart. And because INFJs often give people more chances than they deserve, the final disappointment feels heavier than the earlier ones. It comes after hope. It comes after patience. It comes after the INFJ has already invested their emotional energy. INFJs also struggle when someone they trusted turns out to be inconsistent. They dislike mixed signals, sudden shifts in attitude, and promises that are easily broken. These behaviors clash with the steady and committed nature of the INFJ. Over time, each broken expectation becomes another piece of the wall. Every time the INFJ says, "Maybe it was just a misunderstanding," and gets hurt again, the wall becomes a little stronger. Eventually, the INFJ stops expecting anything from that person. Their warmth turns into silence. Their emotional openness turns into distance. They no longer imagine potential because they no longer feel safe doing so. This is one of the main reasons people suddenly feel shut out by an INFJ. The INFJ's expectations were not just unmet. They were shattered so many times that closing off became the only way to protect themselves. Reason number 3, emotional betrayals cut deeper for them. For an INFJ, trust is one of the most precious things they can give. They do not trust easily, and they do not open up to everyone. Most people only see a small, polite version of them. But when an INFJ decides to share their real thoughts, fears, or hopes with someone, that person becomes part of a very small inner circle. Because this inner circle is so limited, any betrayal inside it feels especially painful. A betrayal does not need to be dramatic. Even something small, like sharing something the INFJ said in confidence, can hit hard. Ignoring their feelings when they need support can also feel like a form of betrayal. When an INFJ lets someone close, they expect honesty, respect, and emotional safety. When those needs are violated, the INFJ feels it at a level most people cannot see. What makes this even harder is that INFJs rarely confront the person who hurt them. They might try once or twice to explain how they feel, but if the other person dismisses, minimizes, or ignores their concerns, the INFJ stops trying. Instead of arguing, they go quiet. Their silence is not passive. It is a sign that something has broken inside them. They begin to distance themselves, even if they still care deeply. Another layer of pain comes from their intuitive nature. INFJs can often sense when someone is hiding something, pulling away, or acting in a way that does not match their words. When they pick up on these inconsistencies, They start connecting the dots. Sometimes the betrayal they feel is not about a single action, but about a pattern of behaviors that slowly showed the INFJ they are not valued the way they believed. Once that realization hits, the emotional wound becomes deep. The INFJ may still remain polite. They may still help when needed. But something changes internally. They no longer trust the person with their inner world. They stop sharing their deeper thoughts. And with every step back, the invisible wall becomes stronger. Emotional betrayal teaches the INFJ a painful lesson. Not everyone handles their trust with care. After too many of these experiences, they begin to guard their heart more fiercely. They create distance, not out of revenge, but out of protection. They would rather lose closeness than feel the pain of broken trust again. This is one of the strongest reasons the wall forms and stays in place. Reason number 4. INFJs need time alone to process hurt. When an INFJ is disappointed or hurt, they do not immediately talk about it or act out. Instead, they pull inward. They need quiet, space, and time to understand what they are feeling. Being alone is not a way to escape from others. It is a way to sort through emotional confusion, gather their thoughts, and calm the inner tension they carry. Solitude allows them to reflect without pressure. They replay scenes in their mind. They think about what was said, what they felt, and what the other person might have meant. This reflection is not overthinking for the sake of it. It is their natural way of processing emotional experiences. But this process is slow, and it can become overwhelming when disappointment keeps stacking up. The more time they spend alone trying to understand why someone hurt them, the more likely they are to pull back from that relationship. They begin to see patterns more clearly. They start to recognize behaviors that do not support them. They notice emotional imbalances they previously ignored. With time, these realizations reshape their understanding of the relationship. Solitude also becomes a form of safety. When they are alone, they can breathe without worrying about being misunderstood. They do not have to pretend they are okay. They do not need to match anyone's expectations. They can simply be themselves. This sense of safety is comforting, especially after emotional disappointment. Over time, the INFJ may prefer that safety over the risk of opening up again. Another part of the problem is that INFJs do not enjoy conflict. If expressing their hurt feels like it will create an argument, they avoid it. Instead of confronting someone who repeatedly lets them down, they retreat into their inner world. This retreat becomes a habit. With each retreat, the distance grows a little wider. As these moments of solitude add up, they create the foundation for the invisible wall. The INFJ is not trying to shut people out entirely. They are trying to protect their emotional balance. But if they spend too long healing alone, the wall becomes harder to lower. It becomes a permanent boundary instead of a temporary break. And by the time people notice the change, the INFJ has already made up their mind about how much access they can safely allow. Reason number 5, they fear repeating the same pain. INFJs learn from emotional experiences very quickly. When something hurts them, they remember it clearly. Their intuition connects patterns, and their mind stores emotional details with surprising accuracy. Because of this, when they face repeated disappointment, they start to predict future pain based on past events. To them, patterns are warnings. Once a pattern appears, they take it seriously. This fear of repeating the same hurt is not irrational. It comes from real experiences where the INFJ gave someone multiple chances, hoped things would change, and ended up hurt again. After several cycles of this, they become more cautious. They begin to think ahead. They imagine what might happen if they stay close to someone who has already shown that they can't offer reliability or emotional safety. Instead of waiting for the next disappointment, the INFJ pulls away before it can happen. This self-protection may seem sudden to others, but it is actually the result of many silent observations. They notice the tone someone uses. They notice when someone stops trying. They notice when respect fades. These small signals add up until the INFJ feels certain that staying open would lead to more pain. Their fear is not about being dramatic. It is about preventing emotional exhaustion. They know how heavy disappointment feels. They know how long it takes them to recover. They know how easily their trust can be shaken. When they sense the possibility of that happening again, they would rather create distance than take the risk. This fear becomes another piece of the invisible wall. It is a defensive strategy shaped by intuition and experience. Once the INFJ believes that a relationship will repeat old wounds, they emotionally withdraw. They stop investing as much. They stop sharing their thoughts. They stop expecting the relationship to grow. Even if the other person apologizes or tries to reconnect, the INFJ may struggle to trust the change. To them, protecting their peace matters more than giving endless chances. After enough disappointments, they decide that certain connections are safer at a distance. The wall helps them maintain that distance. It keeps their heart safe from what they believe will happen if they let it stay open. Reason number 6, they prioritize inner harmony over conflict. INFJs value inner peace more than most people realize. Their mind is always active, filled with thoughts, impressions, and intuitive insights. Because of this, conflict does not just feel unpleasant to them. It disrupts the balance they work hard to maintain. When someone repeatedly disappoints them, the tension that builds inside becomes difficult to manage. Instead of confronting the issue directly, they pull back to protect their inner world. For the INFJ, conflict is not simply an argument or disagreement. It is an emotional storm. They absorb the other person's reactions, tone, and feelings. They think about the long-term effects on the relationship. They try to understand the other person's perspective, even if it hurts. All of this takes energy, and for an INFJ, that energy drains quickly. Because they avoid unnecessary conflict, they often choose silence over confrontation. When someone disappoints them, they may want to express what they feel, but the idea of being misunderstood or dismissed makes them hesitate. If they have tried in the past to explain themselves and nothing changed, they eventually stop trying. Keeping the peace becomes more important than trying to repair something that keeps breaking. Their commitment to harmony also means they notice when a relationship brings more stress than support. When interactions feel tense, unpredictable, or emotionally heavy, the INFJ starts to withdraw. They protect their energy by limiting contact, avoiding emotional risk, and creating distance. The invisible wall becomes a shield that helps them stay calm and stable. This does not mean they do not care. It means they care so much that constant conflict or disappointment becomes unbearable. They would rather lose connection than lose their inner balance. Once the INFJ decides that staying close to someone threatens their peace, they begin lowering access to their emotional world. The wall they build is a way to preserve clarity, calm, and emotional safety. Over time, this wall becomes stronger and more permanent. Not because the INFJ is cold, but because they finally choose themselves. And after too much disappointment, protecting their inner harmony becomes their top priority. The invisible wall that INFJs build after repeated disappointment is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign that they have reached their emotional limit. INFJs feel deeply, care sincerely, and invest heavily in the people they trust. When that trust is not respected, they withdraw to protect the parts of themselves that are most vulnerable. Their distance is a defense, not a rejection. For anyone who loves an INFJ, patience and consistency matter. Respecting their feelings, communicating honestly, and showing reliability can help them lower the wall over time. They do not need perfection. They only need to feel safe, understood, and valued. When those needs are met, the wall softens, and the INFJ becomes warm and open again. If you are an INFJ who relates to these reasons, remember that protecting your peace is valid. And if you are someone who wants to support an INFJ, Remember that trust is built through actions, not promises. Understanding these patterns makes it easier to keep meaningful connections strong and healthy.